I want to read from your book that came out about 10, 15 years ago, and I bought it and never read it. Well, I did read it. I read a bit of inside of it when I first got it, and had, at the time, I was going through a very kind of sick of these Christians and biblical type kind of stage, and I didn't want, and she quoted about the church and the King James Bible, and it kind of pissed me off. Yesterday, a few days ago, actually 2 days ago, I had nothing to read while I was sitting on the toilet. And so I just pulled it off the shelf again and started reading it. And lo and behold, once you get past the Christian overlay of this, it's a very good and very useful book. Now it's Practical Psychic Self Defense by Robert Bruce, and it you think of the Dion Fortune famous book on psychic self defense. It's a more up to date, less antiquated version of that book. So he refers to all entities as negs, NEGS, just for the sake of clarity in the book, so you don't have to go. But it gives you good descriptions and case studies. And there's a list of possession, or what I call infection, in here that's quite useful, and I would like to read from that if you don't mind. You might find this useful, but go out and buy the book though. Buy the whole book. So my apologies to the authors. I'm not, spilling it. I want people to buy your book. The activity of possessing negs, that's negative entities, after the energy bodies of their host, and in turn affect the nervous system. Now, I'm always telling you about the nervous system, how important the nervous system is in everything spiritual and magical. When resident negs are active, peculiar symptoms can arise. While many of these symptoms can have normal medical causes, and these always should be considered and eliminated first before relating them to neg problems, don't overlook the possibility that negs are behind them. And here's the list. Involuntary movements. A sure sign of trouble is when one's body begins performing actions on their own. For example, your hand might reach out and pick up something for no apparent reason. This symptom indicates negs are working through autonomous levels of the unconscious mind. Muscular cramps. These usually come on suddenly and can occur anywhere in the physical body. They can be very painful and even cause physical damage like bruises and torn muscles. One might, for example, get a cramp in the right bicep and the left calf, the right shin, a small area of the chest, neck, back, or stomach, a single toe anywhere in the body. Hernia-like attacks. Sudden painful hernia-like swellings may occur for no reason. For example, a hernia might suddenly appear in the chest muscle when one is resting or sleeping, something that I have been told is medically impossible. I discovered this one from the Coven in Turin, that I was having a problem with this for no reason. It's something that felt like a hernia, and I thought I was having a hernia. Went to the doctors. I didn't have a hernia. It was something trying to have a go at me through a psychic attack. And so that's a very important one. Hernia type things for no hernia involved. I have been told it's medically impossible. These can be in any parts of the body, but are more common in the stomach or chest areas. Now, if you experience these things, don't assume that you're going to be possessed. These things are everywhere, okay? And they're always, when you're going through a bad time or a difficult time, they're always going to try and jump in. But that doesn't mean they get in, okay? You have to remember that. They're actively messing with your nervous system, where you're actually getting warnings here. Like before you get an infection or a cold, you sniffles. The same thing. Doesn't mean it's happening. I have experienced hernia attacks during the time I was possessed, but I have also experienced them during other strong neg attacks since. Several months ago, after suffering several consecutive psychic attacks, I consulted my doctor about the hernia attack problem. I could not, of course, explain what I thought was causing it. He said it's impossible to cause a hernia during sleep or while one is in a deep, relaxed state in bed. He prescribed quinine and vitamin supplements and advised me to use a relaxation technique should it happen again. The same night I came under psychic attack and I woke at 2 a.m. I experienced severe cramping and bulging in my lower right stomach muscles. Fighting the impulse to roll on my fist, to, to roll onto my fist to stop my stomach from tearing itself apart. That's what it felt like. I followed my doctor's advice and used the relaxation technique. This failed, and a minute later experienced a new painful stinging sensation as the muscles and membranes concerned slowly tore. This was very painful, and my doctor could not believe how that happened. When I told him the next day, the bruising was quite evident, and I had to wear a truss for a month until it healed. Now that story I was telling you about when I was 17 and a thing jumped on my back and started beating me up, a monkey-shaped thing, those bruises I had the morning were really there. Stomach and bowel problems. Very important one to watch out for. Nausea, vomiting, stomach and bowel cramps, diarrhea, unexplained bouts of flatulence. Well, that's me all the time. Belching and can be caused by negs. The problems are particularly common when resident negs feel threatened. I once gave a healing to a woman of 35 who began belching loudly and continuously. If you look at old Middle Ages illustrations, they'll show a demon coming out of someone's mouth. That's a belch. Did you know that? That's why people say God bless you and stuff when they sneeze or belch in the old days. Gesundheit. And I once gave a healing to a woman of 35 who began belching loudly and continually. The healing lasted less than a minute. The belching began the moment the energy began flowing into her and continuing loudly for 7 minutes with no let-up, then stopped and suddenly as it began. While a medical explanation is conceivable, the woman had eaten nothing unusual and had no history of belching. Well, I'm okay there with the farting because I'm always eating Mexicans and curries. Given an absence of other... See, always look, check the real thing first. Giving an absence of other symptoms or illness to suddenly erupt in a belching attack at the moment healing begins seemed beyond medical explanation. Sexual arousal. Unusual sexual arousal is a ward and a punishment device used by many negative entities. Depending upon the host's susceptibility, telepathically stimulated fantasies are reinforced with direct stimulation of the genitals. Negs, this is where the succubus and incubus tongue comes in too. Negs can also have more than a little to do with a person's sexuality. One's sexuality over time can either be altered by negs. This is where people get into things like S&M and going to S&M clubs and being into the really nasty stuff like burning people and things like that, autoerotic asphyxiation, that kind of thing. That's always a sign of an entity in there. Negs can have little more to do with a person. Do you remember that Robert Chambers guy who murdered that girl Jennifer Levin in the preppy murderer in Central Park? He was a classic example of one of those types that had been overcome by violent sexuality to feed the entity, and he strangled that girl during an autoerotic asphyxiation thing in Central Park. The rest of his life he was a total asshole, had every chance and opportunity given to him. Okay, one's sexuality over time can even altered by negs who reinforce particular types of sexual fantasies and weaken others. Natural sexual inclination, orientation, and behavioral triggers can be compromised. The physical symptoms of a direct neg stimulation are different from normal sexual arousal. Sensations are deeper, more intense, and urgent. Urgency. Always, this is the thing, it's always urgent. Now, impulsive. And accompanied by deep genital sensations. Negative induced sex compulsions are rewarded with heightened sexual arousal, enhanced orgasmic pleasure sensations, and feelings of comfort and well-being, the Marquis de Sade kind of thing. Pursuing negative entity directed sexual activities can become obsessive in some people. Sex addictions can result from this level of negative influence. Sexual interest can become heavily reliant on neg involvement, causing serious life and relationship problems. These would be the kind of guys that would have, say, a beautiful wife that loves him and fancies him, but loses interest in her and spends all his time watching porn. That's a classic example of that. And you say to yourself, this guy's fine. Why is he a maid? Why is he always watching that, this horrible stuff on, this horrible porn stuff on thing all the time and not, being with his wife? That's a lot has to do with that. Succubus and incubus, I was telling you about that, type entities are well-known neg sexual predators. However, they are not the only neg type capable of causing extreme sexual arousal and utilizing sexual energy. The experience of reward and punishment. Now, this is a very important section in the book, and it was one of the things that really made I really liked this book. That's this book, Practical Psychic Self-Defense by Robert Bruce. The experience of reward and punishments, by far the most common control device used by negs in energy body stimulated rewards and punishments. Neg hosts are rewarded for obedience and punishment for obedience, both in response to neg urges. Reward often entails body energy stimulated endorphin releases, adrenaline rushes, heightened sexual arousal, feelings of comfort and well-being. Punishment entails feelings of pressure, confusion, depression, and loss of desire. Now, this is the same thing as I told you the stories that these entities want to feel. They're jealous of human emotions, sensations. They want to know what it's like to be drunk. They want to know what it's like to have a sexual orgasm. They want to know what it's like to get into a fight and punch someone or be punched. And it's the same thing with this being taken by the fairies. It's a very common thing. Neg-motivated alcoholics and drug addicts are rewarded by negs in the form of short-lived endorphin and adrenaline surges, plus feelings of comfort and well-being. With alcoholics, this occurs when the first drinks are taken, when they get what alcoholics call a buzz or a charge. With all forms of substance addiction, the psychological pressures exerted on addicts are massive, far stronger than the pressures caused by chemical addiction and withdrawal. This is why when you know someone who is a heroin addict, it's the most amazing thing. And I've known loads of heroin addicts in my life. When they recover, a kind of a spiritual wisdom is present in them. And they're often some of the most decent and kind people after they've gotten off the heroin that you'll ever meet. It's quite amazing. There's a there's a wisdom in recovering from heroin. I think William Burroughs in the book Junkie even said something like that it was the getting off going to cold turkey rejuvenated you in every possible way, physically, sexually, spiritually, and especially intellectually. And one of the reasons he went back on heroin was to actually go cold turkey at some point in the future, to have that rejuvenation. It's almost like the what's the word, the tarot fool card being born within you again, and you're given this restoration of life. And this is what really, I think, keeps a lot of people addicted to heroin and things like that. They go back onto it, is because they've not the coming off it and the restoration after going cold turkey is a very empowering thing, and they miss that. With all forms of substance addiction, the psychological pressures exerted on addicts are massive, far stronger than the pressures caused by chemical addiction and withdrawal. In general, pleasurable endorphin releases and feelings of comfort and well-being are common to all neg-related reward situations. Neg conditioning and control devices can involve any type of aberrant behavior. Some people are known to experience sexual pleasure while shoplifting. For example, I once witnessed a woman who having an orgasm during a sudden compulsive spending spree. I gave her a lift into town to pay the airfare for a family. Before I get to that, I've seen Catholic priests in school teachers having a sexual orgasm while they were beating a boy. I've seen that with my own eyes when I was a kid in school. And I've heard stories of nuns beating girls in convent schools, having clear orgasms while they were torturing the little girl. I gave her a lift into town to pay the airfares for the family holiday. When in sight of the travel agent in the mall, she suddenly darted into a jewellery shop. Her facial aspects changed. Her eyes glazed over, and she breathed heavily. She would not listen to reason, but proceeded to purchase several expensive items she did not need. And she handed over the last of her money. She half collapsed and slumped, panting over the counter. She said it was a dizzy spell, but my senses and her symptoms suggested neg overshadowing, possibly accompanied by orgasm. She cried all the way home, devastated by what she had done. Fortunately, her husband was able to return the goods the next day. Hearing disembodied voices. Now, this has never happened to me, and yet I get lots of people leaving me messages saying they would be lying in bed at night and hear a clear voice say something. I've had a thought that sounded in my head like a voice, but it was my voice. But I had people, including family members, tell me they've heard, and these people are not schizophrenic or anything, an actual clear other voice with a different accent talking to them. Hearing disembodied voices, the witches in Turin told me all about this as well. Hearing disembodied voices is a symptom more often related today to mental illness than to supernatural problems. There you go. This is understandable, but I believe auditory voice phenomena stems primarily from neg interference. Neg problems can cause mental illness, but mental illness can also open one to neg problems, such as hearing voices. Having disembodied voices is a common symptom of possession. However, voices do not always indicate possession. See, and possession, however, voices do not always voices do not always, and possession can occur without voices being heard. And people hear these voices, and the sort of like the more straight up ones get panicky, and they run to the psychiatrist or the therapist, and the next thing they know, they're on courses of antipsychotic medication, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're actually hearing another entity, but that doesn't mean that they're mentally ill, and they go on to things like lithium and other drugs like this, and this makes them ironically easier to infect. There are two distinct types of voice phenomena, subjective and objective. The subjective voice is heard inside the head, much like one's own thoughts, but sound different. The objective voice is heard with the ears as a normal voice. Little scientific study has been done on objective voice phenomena, but here are some observations and assumptions based on what I've experienced and observed in others. When the objective voice is heard, the parotid gland, the gland beneath the ear, pulsates and vibrates. This vibration spreads throughout the mastoid bone behind the ear. The mastoid vibrations can be felt with the fingertips, much like the vibrations given off by audio speakers. The mastoid vibrates in tune with the voice being heard, transferring the vibrations into the ear canal, like a diaphragm on a microphone, and making the eardrum vibrate to produce that sound as well. This experience is results of energy body manipulation by the spirit. A spirit manipulates the energy body to produce the voice causing vibrations in the parotid gland and the mastoid gland. Involvement with objective voice production. However, I think it's also possible for an objective voice to manifest from out of thin air. So do I. If the real voice were, if as if a real voice were talking near the ear. Now, here's the most important part of this. You buy the book, and it's the last section I'm reading. Dream indicators. Now, you've heard me for years talk about the dream oracle. Okay, the dream indicators. A dream is the way your subconscious mind communicates to your cognitive mind about things that you should know about and be concerned about. Or things, and that doesn't necessarily mean negative things. It could be things to put you towards people that are better in your life for you and so on. Dream indicators. Now, as another thing, someone told me they had a dream about someone that they loved and they loved them, and the dream had shown to the woman her boyfriend as a dangerous person. And I was saying, does that mean he's evil? And I said, how many years have you been with him? 7. Does he love you? Totally. Do you love him? Totally. I said, that's an entity trying to get into your mind to turn you against your boyfriend. That's what that is. Or a psychic attack by someone who's jealous of you to try and get you to leave your boyfriend. That's what that's all about. Dream indicators. Dreams can provide a wealth of information about one's current state of spiritual and psychological well-being and physical health. But neg interference can cause noticeable changes in dreams. You might, for example, dream you're being hunted by a vampire, or dream of snakes and spiders. Yes, spiders and snakes are very, very, very interesting ones in these kinds of dreams. And also visions and synchronicities and totems. Not saying snakes and spiders are bad, but it's, again, a subconscious transmission from the lower poles of cognition to the upper poles of cognition. Nightmares, to use the psychologist phrase. Nightmares and dreams with abnormal current content are indicated something is wrong. These can result from telepathic dream manipulation during a sleep state. This is especially noticeable when a major psychic attack is in progress and when a neg is in the process of breaking down a person's natural defenses. It can be useful to keep a journal of dreams, including the bad ones. These can help identify the human source of the psychic attack and provide keys to unearthing core images. Now, this is, you know, the way you take care of your health, right? You go out drinking, you don't make sure you don't become an alcoholic and get pissed all the time. You don't put yourself in danger. You don't, put yourself in risk of infection, this kind of thing. And what have I always been saying? No contact ever again. That means if you think in any way, as he belches, if you think in any way, hold on. If you think, great tea, lovely. If you think in any way about the person, you're not, or the individual or the group, you're not in no contact ever again. Especially if you're spying on them on their Facebook page and their fake accounts, you are totally out of control and not in control of your faculties. And this is a very, if you want to heal yourself, and I'm talking about psychic, nervous system health, spiritual health, well-being, you have to decontaminate, isolate, and quarantine your psyche. In the same way, if there was a serious virus outside in the street, you stay indoors. That was the whole purpose of the no contact ever again in toxic individuals and situations. If you can't do it, you're out of control. If you can do it, you're in control. It's really that simple. And spiritual health and spiritual well-being works exactly the same as physical or bacterial or infective issues. It's the same thing in a physical sense. In the same way that, now these symptoms that this Robert Bruce person mentions would be just very similar to if you, like, I had a friend who had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he told me that, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he told me that it started with itchy legs, a really weird sudden anemia, and a sudden weight loss. About 2 years, no, a year and a half, maybe a year ago, that happened to me. I was having, as a sudden weight loss, now it was more than that, it was about 18 months ago. Itching legs at night. And I was anemic. And I thought there was something not right. I went to the doctor and he says, "No, I'll test you for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma." And I was like, "Oh, fucking hell, no, oh God, no. Jesus Christ, no." I didn't mean to say that. It wasn't in the end. But it was a psychic attack. It was a portent of something that was coming. And just like I was observing auguries at the same time, and I was seeing owls, my dreams became very strange. Now, my dreams are like fucking the most magical thing I have about me. I can predict the future. I can see people that I've never met and know everything about them that they don't tell publicly. And I've seen it in dreams. Dreams are so unbelievably undervalued that people, they go to psychics, they go to, astrologers, and I'm not putting down astrologers, they go to mystics, they go to, people, who tell them the future, fortune tellers. There is no better oracle than the dream. None. And this is one of the reasons I always tell people, don't be smoking weed all the time, because you stop having dreams when you're smoking weed all the time. It's like the same thing if you're drinking pissed all the time. You stop having dreams, and you really identify and work on those dreams, and you don't have an emotional development towards them. Like, oh, I had a dream last night about this means God. No. You're stitching threads. It's like one tarot card in a deck does not read the whole deck. One star in the sky does not give a whole astrology chart. One element of one dream does not tell you the story of your life. These are like pictures on a jigsaws, you know? And you're building a picture, and after a while the random pieces start matching up, and in your subconscious mind you're able to see things beyond the material world, which in your subconscious mind. And it's very good. It's very powerful. And it's the best defense against what that book talks about: negative entity possession. There isn't another person on this earth who can help you in that regard. Just like there's not another person on earth who can jump inside your body and heal it of physical illness. You have to do that yourself. And the best way to do that is to remove anyone in your life who's toxic. And it's very easy to know when someone is toxic. When you're around this person, do you feel happier? Is your life more fun? Is there less bullshit in your life? Are you enjoying it better? Or is it a constant struggle? Is it just not working out? Does happiness seem difficult to achieve? Now, this is what you have to do. This is not snobbery. This is not elitism. This is you looking after yourself. An entity cannot invade someone who is in charge and in control of their own psychic destiny. That's really what it is.